Hey, friends! Just so you know, we enjoy the swear word and we rely on good old fashioned humor to get through some seriously dark subject matter. At no time do we intend any disrespect toward the victims or families of the victims in the cases we cover. Also, be sure to listen to the end for a few palate cleansing bloopers to reset your mindset. And with that, we thank you for listening and we hope you enjoy. Hey, friends! Welcome to Crime Will Tell. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Jamie.
And it's already March.
Yes, it sure is.
Don't blink, Christmas is right around the corner.
Oh, hell no. Don't.
But how is it March?
I know, but can we start with something that'll actually be warm?
Christmas is the same day every year, and every year I'm surprised. It's already March. Before I know it, it's going to be Christmas. I might as well just start Christmas shopping now.
I mean, you can. I just want some sunshine first.
You don't feel good. You got the strep. So, what elixir are you drinking tonight for your strep?
I'm trying a new one. I'm not sure if it's called Willette or Willet bourbon, but it is really fancy. And I bought like a really tiny bottle of it.
And is it good?
It's very good. What are you drinking?
So, I am drinking Jefferson's Reserve tonight.
Ooh, yummy.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I want to do what you're doing and like buy a whole bunch of little bottles and everything. I'm not allowing myself to do that until I at least like get rid of half the bottles that I already have. So then I'll be allowed to
branch out a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Well, cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers, my friend.
Clink, clink.
The case we're discussing today took place not that long ago. On February 14th, 2016, at 5:31 p.m., the Fort Myers, Florida Police Department Communications Division received a 911 call from a man at the Maple Crest Apartments by the name of Earl Antonio Joyner, who went by Tony. He indicated that he needed an ambulance. He had just arrived home to the apartment he shared with his girlfriend, 26-year-old Heyzel Obando, where he found Heyzel in their bedroom, unresponsive and covered in blood.
Oh, shit.
According to a June 15th, 2019 article written by Susie Shuttlecott for The Ledger, Joyner told the dispatcher that he didn't know what was wrong with her, saying, quote, "She's just sitting there. There's blood all over her. She's got blood everywhere. Sir, oh my God."
Ugh.
Now, a big assist to my research was the episode that the TV series Cold Justice on the Oxygen Network produced about this case. I started doing the research for this case and I happened to stumble upon it and I was like, no fucking way. There's quite a few articles out there, but they all say the same thing. So this was really nice. It was a refreshing breath of fresh air to get something on a pretty obscure case.
That's the one with Kelly
Siegler, yes!
I fucking love her.
And Cold Justice was instrumental in solving this case because it had gone cold. And because of Kelly Siegler and the crew, they picked it up as a cold case and they worked with the Fort Myers Police Department and they were able to help finally bring justice for Heyzel.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. And also, I will be fangirling.
As you should.
Because this case was predominantly all female detectives.
Oh, even better.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
So when you watch Cold Justice's episode, it's called The Valentine's Day Violence. I love me some alliteration. You'll be able to see police body cam footage of them arriving on scene. But before I get into that, let me take a small step back. And the reason for that is because EMS, Emergency Medical Services, EMS arrived on the scene first. So while in the Cold Justice episode, you can see the police body cam footage, EMS had already been on the scene before police arrived. So I'm going to start there.
Okay.
EMS arrived at around 5:43 p.m., so about 12 minutes after Joyner called 911. And according to a filed affidavit, this is what EMS found when they arrived. Quote, female found lying supine next to the bed. That means on your back. There was a male who was inconsolable and distraught beside her, trying to move her to do CPR. He appeared to be trying to push on her, but was not actually pushing. Where his hands were located were almost below the ribs at her abdomen. He was doing this while all the while trying to keep his phone to his ear. It was immediately observed that there was clotted blood around her nose. Lividity and rigor were present. Rigor was present throughout her whole body. Her feet were immovable. There was blood on the bed and blanket. When we were finally able to move him from her, we could see his phone still connected to 911. A broken door jamb and the lock were noticed in the bedroom in the corner behind a box. It appeared to have come from the door. Heyzel was pronounced dead at 5:44 p.m., 1 minute after EMS arrived on scene. She had a gunshot wound to her head. At the same time EMS was pronouncing Heyzel deceased, that's when the Fort Myers Police Department arrived on scene. Sergeant Jason Petaccio entered the bedroom first, and he is who I believe had the body cam camera on him. And you can see this footage in the Cold Justice episode. Through the body cam footage, we can see Joyner squatting next to Heyzel, who is on her back on the floor of their bedroom, lying next to the side of their bed and in front of a nightstand, a bedside table. He was touching her with both hands, and you can actually see the positioning of his hands. It aligns with the description in the affidavit given by EMS, because you can actually see in the video, his hands were like on her side, but like on the side of her like torso, down by her abdomen, like under her ribs. You know, like where we have our spare tires and love handles hang out?
Yep.
That area.
Oh, like the total side.
The total side, yes.
What the fuck?
I know.
That's weird.
Sergeant Petaccio asked Joyner what his name was. And in the body cam footage, you see Joyner kind of like lean back on his haunches, still in the squatted position, and then slowly look up at Sergeant Petaccio with like this complete look of shock and disbelief on his face. Like he just could not get his head wrapped around what he was seeing. That was the look on his face. And Sergeant Petaccio had asked him 2 more times, like, dude, what's your name, man? What's your name? He never responded. Another police officer on scene, Lieutenant Roger Valdivia, then asked Joyner multiple times to leave the bedroom and go into the living room. Lieutenant Valdivia was like, come on, man, come with me. We have to process the scene. Let's get you out of here and let's get you in the living room. And finally, Joyner like stands up and just like slowly walks out of the bedroom and is escorted into the living room. At this point, he still hasn't said a word because it's almost like he is paralyzed with shock. It's quite something to see. Another police officer, Officer Matthew Yeomans, walked Joyner outside, down the exterior stairs, and into the parking lot of the apartment complex. So their apartment was on the 2nd floor. So you could go up the stairs to get to their apartment door. So Officer Yeomans walks him out and gets him down into the parking lot. And Officer Yeomans found Heyzel and Joyner's 2 daughters in the back seat of Joyner's car, presumably in their car seats because they were very young. They were 3 and 1.
Holy shit.
And Joyner's car engine was still running and had appeared to be running the entire time.
Wow.
So it's like he pulled up, he got out of the car and went up to the apartment, leaving the car running and the 2 girls inside, and found Heyzel in that position, called 911. So for at least 15 minutes or so, those girls were downstairs outside in a running car, sitting in their car seats.
Whoa. Okay.
Nothing happened to them. They're fine.
Oh, good.
This whole thing did not make any sense to me, but we're going to be circling back to that later. So put a pin in that one. Sergeant Brian O'Reilly, Detective Michael Walsh, and Detective Albert Antonini from the Fort Myers Homicide Unit then arrived. Detective Walsh was assigned to be the lead investigator, and as he walked up to the scene, he found Joyner in the parking lot, sitting in a chair next to what would later be learned to be his Dodge SUV. And Officer Yeomans and a victim advocate by the name of Shavala Jones, who she had been called to the scene to assist because there's children and Joyner
Right.
and
Yeah.
this very devastating situation and death. And so this victim advocate's on scene. And Shavala Jones and Officer Yeomans are kind of like hanging around near Joyner, keeping an eye on him, making sure he's okay, trying to get some information from him, but he's not really talking.
Mm.
Detective Walsh introduced himself to Joyner. And then when he went into the apartment, he began to process the scene, guide everybody else, taking some photographs just digitally so he could reference them later, that kind of stuff. According to that same article for the Ledger written by Susie Shuttlecott, when asked if he knew of anyone that might want to harm Heyzel, Joyner said he didn't know of anyone and further said that, quote, it was simply a rough neighborhood. Now, he wasn't wrong. Their apartment complex was situated near or like adjacent to another apartment complex that was known to have regular gun violence. So the sound of gunfire wasn't actually out of place, unfortunately.
Mm.
The area of town they lived in was not known to be the best part of town. It wasn't like the super worst part, but there were some challenges. When asked directly what he thought might have happened to Heyzel, Joyner declined to provide any type of explanation or conjecture, and he instead asked for a lawyer.
Okay.
Now, I don't blame him one bit for this because I feel like if I found myself in a situation like this, the first thing they're going to look at is the spouse or the
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
be like, I need a lawyer. This is too much. Now, I was confused why Joyner would tell the dispatcher that Heyzel was sitting up when in the police body cam footage, she was clearly lying on her back on the bedroom floor. And I'm like, what the fuck? There's got to be something here.
Yeah.
After digging into the details of the 911 call, Heyzel was indeed sitting up initially, but Joyner was instructed by the dispatcher to get her lying on her back on the floor so that he could begin life saving efforts like CPR. When he
Okay.
attempted to move her, he told the dispatcher that she was stiff and not moving, and he started to cry. After he was finally able to get her lying on her back, the dispatcher then instructed Joyner to begin CPR. So this is why he was like, she's sitting unresponsive, but then when we see her body, it's actually lying on the floor.
Right. Okay.
We're also
Yeah,
going to
makes
circle
sense.
back to this.
Okay.
There's just a little bit more information that sort of just it's interesting. It's also worth noting that while the dispatcher had no way of knowing what kind of condition Heyzel truly was in, and honestly, the script that dispatchers follow is let's get life-saving measures going until,
Right.
help arrives. This dispatcher, he was following the script and he was telling Joyner, go ahead, start life-saving efforts, position her on the ground, things like that. He had no idea that any life-saving efforts for Heyzel would have been pointless because it was very obvious that Heyzel had been dead for some time. She did not pass away minutes before Joyner found her.
And in my mind, I'm picturing how hard it must have been for him to get her flat on the floor, like if rigor had already set in. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's like maneuver her.
Yeah.
So the position of Joyner's hands, I wonder if they were by her side because he knew there was no point in trying to do CPR. But he's not going to argue with the dispatcher. And when you hear the 911 call, the dispatcher is telling him to talk out loud. And so you can hear him like count out loud doing the CPR. And you can hear him go 1, 2, 3, but he wasn't actually doing CPR. At least it didn't look like he was.
All right. Okay.
All right. So I've set the scene. I'm going to deviate just a smidge. And before I go any further into the investigation, as it starts to ramp up, I'm going to give us a little information about Heyzel and Joyner. Heyzel was born in 1990 in Nicaragua. And when she was about 12 months old, she moved with her family to the southern part of Florida, where she grew up. She was really into music and writing. So she had a very lovely creative side to her, but she also liked to exercise. So she was kind of a physical person too. She had a close relationship with her mother, Isabel, and she had a close relationship with her brother, Brian. So they were a really tight knit family. She and Brian would often hang out together socially. Like they would just like go out as friends and like hang out with their friends and
Aw,
just like
I
do
love
that.
that.
And Brian, when he was interviewed and talked about Heyzel, he would talk about how she was usually the one he turned to when he needed a shoulder or needed to talk through some life situation. He would go to her because she had the best
Aw,
advice. Isn't that lovely?
yes.
Hazel met Joyner in 2012. So when she was 22, when they both worked at a Champs Sports store in Key West,
Fun.
Florida, Key West, Florida. Shortly after meeting, they began dating, and it wasn't long before Hazel found herself pregnant. So she gave birth to their first daughter in 2013. In 2014, she became pregnant again and gave birth to their second daughter in 2015. So by the time of Hazel's death, her daughters were 3 and 1 or around there.
Okay.
Also, by the time of her death, Hazel had made a very brave decision and she went back to school. She went back to school to create and make a better life for herself and her 2 kids.
Mhm.
By all accounts, Hazel fucking loved those girls. She loved them. She loved being their mother. She felt like she was the luckiest person on earth because she got to be the mother of them.
Aw.
Yeah. And when you hear her mother, Isabel, talk about Hazel as a mother, you can see that. That just makes me really sad because they were so young. They don't have memories.
Right. Yeah.
In January 2016, Hazel seemed really excited about life. She had started a job at H&R Block in Fort Myers and had posted on her Facebook page, quote, "Got lots of big future plans we are doing. Need to get ready for 2016. Will not be easy, but I promise it will be our last hard year of work." She was a go-getter.
Yeah.
Joyner was born in 1985, so he was 5 years older than Hazel. He was a star football player at Haines City High School in Haines City, Florida, which is about 2.5 hours north of Fort Myers. Joyner went on to play for the Florida Gators at the University of Florida as a safety from the 2004 to 2007 seasons
Damn.
under coach Urban Meyer, well known coach. In his junior year, which is third year in college here in the United States, he played in the game that defeated Ohio State for the BCS National Championship. This was in January 2007. During his senior year, he was named team captain, and by all accounts, he was a quite talented player. He was roommates with Tim Tebow
Really?
and was teammates with Aaron Hernandez.
That's a notable team for
Yeah,
sure.
when he was teammates with Aaron Hernandez, it was for only 1 year. Aaron was an incoming freshman tight end, and Joyner was a defensive safety in his senior year. So they only were teammates for 1 year. Most people know Aaron Hernandez had been convicted of murder himself and then took his own life in prison in 2017.
Yeah.
So that whole situation, completely unrelated to Joyner, but weird coincidences.
Right? Yeah.
Hazel and Joyner's relationship was fraught from the beginning with regular and repeated episodes of domestic violence perpetrated by Joyner. They would argue. He would physically assault her, beat the shit out of her. Then he would swoop in with flowers and apologies and I love
Of
yous and
course.
tell her he'd change and he'd never hit her again and he'd never talk to her like that again. And then Hazel would forgive him and she would drop the charges she's filed against him. And then the cycle would start all over
Right.
again.
Yeah.
And from all the police reports that Hazel filed, you can see Joyner's aggression very clearly laid out and kind of like starting to escalate a little bit.
Yeah. That's pretty typical,
The other
unfortunately.
thing about Heyzel is that she was quite an assertive woman. She wasn't a wallflower. She wasn't a rug. She wasn't a pushover. She would stand up for herself. She wore her
Mm,
crown proud as a woman, as a strong, independent woman. That's just proof that domestic violence is a really hard cycle to break.
yeah, it is.
Okay, so now we know a little bit about Heyzel. We know a little bit about Joyner. Let's get back to the investigation. All right. Fort Myers Police Department crime scene technicians were notified of Hazel's death and were asked to respond to the scene. And in walks a trio of queens. And we haven't
Oh,
even gotten to the other trio of queens or quadruple of queens that we're going to get to. But in walks a trio of crime scene technician queens, Trina Maurice, Jessica Worthy, and Marissa Popple. They took official crime scene photographs and began processing the apartment for evidence. According to the filed affidavit, they found one fired cartridge casing. It was a 9mm Talamo Luger, which is a type of brand of ammo that is not common.
hmm,
And they found this casing in a corner of the bedroom. This casing was found inside a small cardboard box that was open, and it was sitting on the floor between the nightstand and the wall. They found one live round of the same ammunition brand inside a closed drawer of one of the nightstands next to the bed. There were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, though there were visible signs of damage to the interior door frame of the front door into the apartment, but on the interior side. So, like if you were going out of the apartment,
okay.
on the inside, there was damage to the door frame of the door, but there was no damage coming into the apartment.
Right. Like someone was trying to kick the door in or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hazel's purse was sitting out in the open on the table in the dining room, and the money that was in it was clearly visible and it wasn't disturbed. Her mobile phone was on a charger on one of the nightstands in the bedroom, and a laptop was on a table that was in the bedroom. Nothing seemed rifled through. There didn't seem to be any ransacking, nothing that would give indication of a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah.
The crime scene technicians, Trina, Jessica, and Marissa, collected right and left hand fingernail clippings from Heyzel. When these clippings were later processed for DNA, nothing was found under her nails, indicating that she didn't fight for her life against an unknown intruder. She literally had nobody else's DNA under her fingernails. They didn't find the murder weapon, and neighbors weren't much help. It seemed that no one saw or heard anything that could pinpoint the activity that was occurring in Heyzel and Joyner's apartment to any specific time, because neighbors were like, yeah, they fight all the time. They're always
Mm,
yelling. There's always thumping. And also, we always hear gunshots everywhere. So I don't know.
another day. Fuck.
Side note, what's really cool is in the body cam footage in the Cold Justice episode, you can see the small open cardboard box sitting on the floor in the bedroom between the wall and the nightstand, where the investigators found the spent cartridge that was discussed in the filed affidavit. So that was really cool. I was like, oh, there's a fucking box.
There it is.
As investigators began fanning out and questioning potential witnesses and family members, another Fort Myers detective, Mylisa Langdon, spoke with Hazel's mother. I'm going to try and get this. Isabel del Carmen Martinez,
Perfect.
who shared with Detective Langton that her daughter Hazel started dating Joyner in 2012 when they both worked at Champ Sports in Key West, Florida. Isabel said that their relationship was rocky right from the start and that Joyner would regularly physically abuse Hazel. She recounted a specific incident that occurred the day after Christmas in 2013. Joyner and Hazel had been arguing when Isabel heard Joyner say to Hazel, quote, "If you call the police, you're going to see how fast I can rearrange your face with this bat,"
Oy.
referencing the baseball bat that Isabel saw Joyner holding when he said
Jesus.
this. And Isabel also told Detective Langton that shortly before her death, Hazel had told her that she believed Joyner was involved with other women and that she was going to confront him about it. Heyzel also told her mom that there were issues with Joyner frequenting strip clubs on a regular basis and that she knew for a fact that Joyner owned a pistol. And this scared her.
Hmm.
On Friday, February 12th, 2016, 2 days before Joyner's, boy, that's before Joyner's is not easy to say, before his 911 call, Heyzel told her mom that she had just gotten her tax return money and that she was worried that Joyner was going to take all this money from her and blow it on strippers.
Mm.
Just the week prior, Heyzel and Joyner had gotten into an argument about money that ended in Joyner hitting Heyzel and then putting a pistol to her head and threatening to kill her. Isabel told Detective Langton that the same evening of February 12th, she had been texting with Heyzel, and Heyzel shared that she was upset because Joyner was not home yet and that she had tracked his phone to a bar. The last time Isabel spoke to her daughter was at 7:54 p.m. on Friday, February 12th. And she received a text from Heyzel saying she was going to Walmart to pick up some diapers for her youngest daughter. The next day, Saturday, February 13th, Isabel tried calling Heyzel all day, but never connected with her. Heyzel never picked up her calls, never called her back, never sent her a text message. She tried calling Heyzel on Sunday, February 14th, but again, Heyzel never picked up her phone. Very unusual behavior. This is not normal for Heyzel. She and her mom were very close and they talked regularly throughout the day, every day, basically. She wasn't getting any answers, no phone calls back, no messages, no nothing. Isabel then tried calling Joyner on Sunday, February 14th, around 2:30, after 2 days not being able to get a hold of Heyzel, to see if he knew where Heyzel was, but Joyner didn't answer her call. About a half hour later, Isabel got a text message from Joyner. He told her he was visiting his parents in Winter Haven, but that he would let Heyzel know that Isabel had been called looking for her. Sadly, that afternoon, a neighbor friend of Hazel's broke the news to Isabel that Heyzel had been killed.
That's how she found out?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
Fuck.
Yeah. And it was through no fault of the police.
Yeah, but still. Hopefully the neighbor was a friend and like an actual comfort to her.
Yeah. The neighbor was a friend of Hazel's.
Okay.
And Isabel actually happened to have called that neighbor friend looking for Heyzel. And the neighbor friend was like, "Oh my gosh, you don't know?"
Okay.
Despite doggedly working Hazel's case, no new leads came in, and pretty quickly the case went cold. They didn't really have a lot of evidence. Nobody was talking. Nobody knew anything. Until 2019, when the Oxygen Network's Cold Justice series got involved. Kelly Siegler, the host of Cold Justice and a prosecutor, traveled to Fort Myers, Florida, and met with a crew of badass female detectives. Detective Melissa Langton, she goes by Molly, Sergeant Lisa Brenneman, and homicide investigator Tanya Ryder.
Okay.
Their goal was to solve Hazel's case and get justice for her family. So here on out, I'm going to refer to Kelly, Tanya, Molly, and Lisa as the squad.
Okay. I love it.
They're the squad. Now, it is true that Joyner was not in Fort Myers for a portion of the weekend of Hazel's murder.
Okay.
Investigators were able to verify that Joyner was a little over 2 hours north of Fort Myers in Winter Haven visiting his parents with their 2 daughters, just like he told Hazel's mom, Isabel, and just like he told the police. They were able to validate that. Joyner's mother confirmed to investigators that Joyner was indeed at their house with his 2 daughters for a visit that weekend. And mobile phone records of the weekend showed Joyner's phone pinging off a tower near his mother's home in Winter Haven. So his phone puts him there. He puts himself there. His mom corroborates it.
Okay.
There was also a Winter Haven dollar store receipt from Joyner dated February 14th, 2016 at 9:40 a.m., where he bought some clothing for the girls and toothbrushes, things like that. So solid proof Joyner had indeed been in Winter Haven that weekend.
Okay.
In November 2019, the squad got a phone call from the Port St. Lucie Police Department. A guy was walking his dog and found a box containing all kinds of personal items, including like a debit card, a mobile phone, Heyzel Obando's driver's license.
Ugh.
This
Okay.
guy was like, oh boy, this isn't good. So he used Google
Yeah.
to search up Hazel to see if he could figure out where she was to get her stuff back to her. And that's when he learned that she had been murdered in 2016, more than 3.5 years earlier.
Mm.
He contacted Port St. Lucie police and turned over the box of personal items to them. He's like, here you go.
Yeah.
Now, another question for the squad is why on earth was there a box of personal effects belonging to both Heyzel Obando and Joyner strewn about in some random area in Port St. Lucie, 2.5 hours away from Fort Myers?
Yeah.
We're going to come back to this too.
Okay. All right.
The squad reanalyzed the 911 call. And something that stood out to them was the number of times Joyner told the dispatcher, I'm sorry, and the number of times he called the dispatcher, sir. The phone call is laced with I'm sorries and sirs. The transcript of the phone call in the filed affidavit is laced with I'm sorries and sirs. It might just be the way he talks.
Yeah.
The detectives found both items quite odd. I don't, but I'll explain why in a minute. They also found it odd that he told the dispatcher that he found Hazel all bloody, but when the dispatcher asked him if he could see her chest rising and falling with breathing, Joyner responded that it was too dark in the room and that he could barely see in there. So that was the first time where my little spidey sense went up and I was like, wait a minute. You would think the first thing he'd do when looking for Hazel in the apartment is to turn the light on in a dark room.
Yeah.
So he could kind of, see. But he said he already saw her in the room with blood all over her. But then he said he couldn't see her in the room if she was breathing because it was too dark.
Ugh.
So when you listen to the phone call, it doesn't initially stand out. At least it didn't to me. When I listened to it again, I was like, wait a minute, that's weird. And all the I'm sorries and the sirs, it just seemed like a really odd phone call. But one thing to consider is that it is possible that Joyner struggled in his 911 call because he has had past run-ins with the police. He is known to the Fort Myers Police Department from all the domestic violence charges.
And I was thinking that he could have maybe been saying, I'm sorry to her. Like, I'm sorry I wasn't here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to protect you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It could have been he was trying very hard to be extra polite so that there would be no delay in dispatching of help and police and EMS because he knew that he's had several run-ins before and he didn't want there to be any delays.
Yeah.
He was, you can see how shocked he is in the body cam footage of the police.
Right,
so
yeah.
there could be a host of number of things. But the squad, they were like, it's weird. They're like, I've listened to a lot of 911 calls. It's weird. It's fucking weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just weird. Or maybe it's fucking weird. You know what I'm saying? Now, what was really cool was that the squad went to the Maple Crest apartment Hazel and Joyner used to live in to view the layout of the rooms and recreate the scene to get a better understanding of what happened. So essentially, like I mentioned, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page, because there's time gaps here. A couple of the detectives on the squad, the cold case squad, were also the original detectives in 2016 investigating the case. And so it can be confused. I got a little confused. So original 2016 Detective Molly Langton was on it. She, they all investigated. It went cold.
Okay.
Cold Justice with the Oxygen Network with Kelly Siegler decided to pick up the case. This was in 2019. So 3 years later, they're picking up the case to see if they can solve it.
Awesome.
And one of the reasons why they chose this case is because there's all kinds of digital footprint. So there's a ton of data. 2016, they could still look at all this stuff, but 2019, the technology is even a little better.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're in 2019. The squad is the cold case squad, and we've got Kelly Siegler from Cold Justice. We've got Molly, Lisa, and Tanya, who are female badass homicide investigators and detectives and sergeants, and they're on it. And so they're like, you know what? Let's go back to the Maple Crest apartment, the exact apartment that Hazel and Joyner lived in. And let's fucking recreate this scene and see what that tells us. They also wanted to view the exact layout of the rooms so that they could have a good understanding of exactly, you know, how like when you see something, you just have a better understanding of it, especially if you're visual.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Everything that happened the evening or the morning or whenever, because we still don't really know exactly when Hazel was killed, everything that took place that when she was killed was in the primary bedroom that Hazel and Joyner shared.
Okay.
Hazel had to have been facing the bedroom door. So she was inside the bedroom looking at the bedroom door.
Okay.
The shooter would have had to have been standing just inside the bedroom by the door facing Hazel. Investigators know this based on the location of Hazel's body and the path the bullet took.
Huh.
Only one bullet was fired in the bedroom. The bullet went through Hazel, traveled through the air and struck the wall of the closet behind her, went through that wall, through clothing that was hanging up in the closet, through the back wall of the closet, and then exited the exterior wall of the apartment building itself.
Damn.
So the bullet just went right through everything out the exterior wall.
Wow.
And investigators, when they went outside and looked up at the exterior wall of the apartment building, you could see the bullet hole.
Huh.
That's scary, how powerful guns and bullets and all this stuff is.
Yeah.
When investigators lined up the bullet's trajectory and Hazel's head wound, they were able to isolate where Hazel was standing and where her killer was standing when she was shot. When she was shot, she just dropped right where she was standing and ended up in a sitting position with her back and head against the side of the bed mattress.
Wow. Okay.
This is reinforced when you see there isn't that much blood, if any blood, on Hazel's clothing, but there is all kinds of blood on the mattress, the bed sheets, and the blanket of the bed, where you can see she was just sitting up against the bed.
And obviously bleeding from the back of her head.
Right, because, and we'll get into this later, but the bullet exited behind, and then when she dropped, she was bleeding from behind. What's further reinforced is exactly where the shooter was standing and where Hazel was standing. This was all further reinforced when you factor in where the bullet casing was found inside that small open cardboard box on the floor in between the wall and the nightstand. That box was sitting to the right of the shooter. And the type of gun that was used, we know that when a bullet is fired, the casing is ejected out the right-hand side.
Gotcha. Okay.
They also know that whoever shot Hazel was taller than her because the path of the bullet traveled through her head at a downward angle. All right. So they've done the scene recreation. They know exactly where everybody was positioned in the bullet travel path. The squad started trying to piece together how things might have played out if an unknown intruder broke into the apartment and shot Hazel.
Okay.
And what they couldn't get past was the fact that there was no unknown DNA under her fingernails. She was a fighter. It was highly unusual to think that she wouldn't have fought back.
Right.
If someone was trying to hurt her, if somebody was trying to hurt her girls.
Yeah, for sure.
Investigators believe, Hazel's family believes, that she would have fought back. There would have been some evidence under her fingernails. However, she could have suddenly confronted the intruder, like maybe she was in the bedroom and she came out of the bedroom and around the corner and there's the intruder and they startled each other and just by reflex, the intruder shot and killed her. That's a very real possibility.
Right, yeah.
Things like that happen.
And if you're not close enough to somebody and they catch you off guard, you're not going to be close enough to fight. So that makes sense.
That's true. And then she wouldn't have anything under her hands. Then the squad started trying to piece together how things might have played out if Joyner himself was the person that shot Hazel. Perhaps they were in an argument in another part of the apartment, and maybe Hazel walked away from Joyner and went into the bedroom. Maybe Joyner followed her. She turned around to continue talking to him and he shot her. In this Cold Justice episode, Detective Sergeant Lisa Brenneman, she's the one that's kind of like going through this scenario. She's like, yeah, maybe they got into a fight. Maybe like she was like, fuck you, I'm leaving. And she walks into the bedroom. And then, he's like, don't you walk away from me. And he's following her into the bedroom. And she turns around and is like, that's it, I'm done. And he just shoots her. It was kind of cool to see the process because they were like, well, let's play this scenario out and let's throw everything up on the wall and see what sticks. Okay, what about this scenario? Okay, what about
Yeah.
this scenario? To kind of rule things in or out as plausible.
So, whenever the initial investigation was happening, was he like on their radar, or because he was out of town, was he kind of cleared and it just wasn't until the more recent investigation that he became a suspect?
That's a great question. I don't think he was on their radar, and I don't think he was off their radar.
Gotcha. Okay. They just
Uh,
didn't have enough to go
they
on.
had like nothing.
Okay.
I got the impression that they suspected that he knew more than he was saying,
Mm,
but they had nothing to like hold him,
yeah.
prove it, threaten him with, nothing.
Mm,
I don't think anyone was ruled in or out
okay.
in the initial investigation in 2016.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
So remember, the type of ammo that was used to kill Hazel was uncommon,
Mm-hmm.
the Tulamo
Yeah.
ammo. The fact that there was a live bullet that the crime scene technicians found in a closed drawer of one of the nightstands, this nightstand ended up being on the side of the bed that Joyner slept on. You know how
Ah.
you can tell who
Oh,
sleeps
yeah.
on which side.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So when they opened up this nightstand drawer, there was a live unspent Tulamo 9mm bullet in there, along with the owner's manual of a 9mm gun.
Oh my God. Okay.
So there was that.
Jeez.
Uh,
Fucking Tony.
and interestingly, Joyner previously shared on Facebook that he got a new gun and posted a picture of him with
God.
it, a 9mm.
Wow.
This gun has never, ever been recovered by police. So this scenario is possible too. It could have been an intruder. It could have been Joyner. It could have been someone she knew that was an intruder, and that's why there was no forced entry from the exterior part of the
Right.
door.
Yeah.
She let him in, whatever. Now, there are two pieces of evidence the squad is struggling to reconcile. They're struggling to reconcile the interior broken frame of the front door. And they're struggling to reconcile the box of items belonging to Hazel and Joyner that were found. Together, these items lead investigators to think the shooter was probably someone other than Joyner. It was impossible to tell when the damage to the interior door frame occurred.
Yeah.
It could have been the night of Hazel's murder from an intruder, could have occurred sometime in the past, have no relation to Hazel's death. It's a big question mark. So these are the two things that they're like, we got to figure these things out. They could be clues or we have to rule them out, one of the two.
Yeah.
The personal effects in this box were everyday items, literally nothing special. There was like an open half-used box of Theraflu, one shoe that was like a white and black male a sneaker. It was like the right shoe. Hazel's driver's license was in this box of things, but the bottom right-hand corner, it looked like it had been cut off with scissors. So it might have been expired. There was a damaged mobile phone, like the screen was all cracked. There was a makeup bag. There was like a little cute pink rosary that looked like it might have been for one of the girls. Things like that. Like nothing that a robber would steal.
Yeah.
There's no that doesn't have these items didn't have any value to somebody that they didn't belong to.
Yeah, or if it was something, that was evidence that could have incriminated someone, so they had to get rid of it.
Right.
It's just very weird.
It was just out of place and very weird. And Joyner didn't indicate that anything had been missing from the apartment. He wasn't like, hey, I had this phone sitting on my nightstand. It's not there anymore. And also, where's my other shoe?
I've got this left shoe.
Yeah. And then like there's some things of Hazel's that aren't here anymore that I remember being here, whatever. But these items in the box, they were so innocuous. Like it's possible Joyner didn't even notice that they were missing.
Right. That's
So,
true.
I mean, that's the last thing you're not going to be like, where are my shoes in the middle of a crime scene?
Right. Where is that one old ID with the corner cut off of it?
So this box of stuff was truly a stumper. They were just like, the squad was like, I just don't know what the fuck to make of this. So the squad re-interviewed a witness, a woman by the name of Kira Nemeth.
Sounds like
Nemeth.
it just sounds like you
One
have
of the two.
lisp. Anytime a name ends in "th," that's where my mind went. I am very sorry.
Okay. The squad re-interviewed a witness, a woman by the name of Kira Nemeth.
I can't not hear it.
I'm fucking crying over here, man. I'm just going to call her Kira. Who was a neighbor of Heyzel and Joyner's and who actually took their little girls and watched them until Hazel's mother, Isabel, was able to get to them the evening Joyner called 911.
Okay.
During that interview, Kira confirmed for detectives that Joyner had never taken the girls by himself on a trip before, and that it was highly surprising that he did because he wouldn't even stay in the apartment with the girls by himself so that Heyzel could run an errand. He refused to watch the girls.
One of those dads.
Yes.
Awesome.
So the fact that he left with both girls on a solo trip to 2.5 hours north to Winter Haven to visit his mom and dad for the weekend seemed really odd to Kira.
Yeah.
And so she told detectives that. She told the squad that. Kira also shared with detectives that Heyzel told her about a time when Joyner got upset with her, took her by the neck, and slammed her up against the wall.
Oh my God.
She told Kira that if anything ever happened to her, it was going to be because of him. Kira was the neighbor friend who told Hazel's mom that Heyzel had passed away. So she was good friends with Heyzel.
Okay, good.
So the squad talked to Fort Myers patrol officer Christian Reynolds, who back on June 18th, 2013, responded to a domestic violence incident that took place in the parking lot of the Edison Mall in Fort Myers. Apparently, Joyner had called one of his ex-girlfriends who happened to call him back when he and Heyzel were together in the parking lot. And Heyzel saw that some chick was blowing up his phone and they started arguing about it. And Heyzel grabbed his phone from his hand and threw it on the ground. And this fucking pissed off Joyner, who then attacked Heyzel, like attacked her. By the time Officer Reynolds arrived on scene, Heyzel was pretty fucked up. Like you can see it in the video. She had scratches fucking everywhere. Her face, her chest, her arms, her hands. She looked like she had actually been punched in the mouth because her mouth, like her lips were really swollen and like she just looked like she had been punched or slammed into something. And she had bled enough that there was blood in the car, blood on the ground around her, and kind of blood, like a good amount of blood on her.
Man.
Joyner told Officer Reynolds that he never attacked Heyzel. He only charged at her, but then he lost his balance and fell into Heyzel, and then they both fell into the car, and that's how Heyzel got injured.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
Especially if you see the injuries that she had. There's no way you get those kinds of injuries from falling into a car.
Right. And like all over your damn body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you fall all the way around the car while spinning in circles? No.
Exactly. I don't mean to laugh, but I just had this mental image of you flailing around a car.
Jesus. What an idiot.
Yeah. And not only was it a load of bullshit just because of her injuries, but there were numerous bystanders that witnessed Joyner attack her in the parking lot. It was in broad daylight.
Jeez.
What's interesting and a very, very sad foreshadowing is that Officer Reynolds talked with Heyzel. He got her and Joyner separated, and he got back up on the scene. Joyner's being arrested and handled and processed, and Officer Reynolds is talking to Heyzel, and he's like, listen, it's very common for domestic violence relationships to escalate and progressively get worse and worse and worse. And sometimes they end in homicide. Kelly Siegler was like, oh, you told her that? And he was like, yes, ma'am, I did. It was like a gut punch.
I've heard that in multiple cases where, officers try to warn women whenever they're called out to domestic violence cases. And they're like, look, this might be the first call, but the next
Yeah.
one's going to be so much worse. And then the next one, and
And
eventually
worse.
the last one is the absolute worst.
Yep. And we have to bring a bag.
Yeah. So, it's so sad.
Now, there is no actual specific date and time of death indicated on Hazel's death certificate because it hadn't been possible to effectively isolate that detail with how long she had been dead by the time Joyner called 911 and EMS arrived.
Okay.
Dr. Thomas Coyne was the medical examiner that conducted Hazel's initial autopsy in 2016. He joined the squad in 2019 when they reopened the case. Well, the case was never actually closed, but when they reinvigorated it, he joined them to give them all the information that he could to help them solve the case. So back in 2016, during the autopsy, he noted that Heyzel had sustained a gunshot that went through the eye socket of her right eye in a downward trajectory. So the bullet traveled through her eyeball, through her brain, through her spinal cord, severing it at the C1 vertebrae, which is the first vertebrae we have in our spines, and it sits just below our brainstem. And it's a pretty fucking important part of our spinal column. Our C1 and C2 vertebrae together form what's called the atlantoaxial joint. This joint allows us to move our head all around, super broad range of motion. And more of our head's rotational range of motion comes from this atlantoaxial joint than any other cervical joint in our spinal column. So because of C1, C2 together doing their beautiful dance, like one of them rotates around the other, we can move our heads any which way.
So does that mean that owls have like a really elaborate one?
It's so funny that you say that because I was literally about to say, but we don't have the kind of C1 and C2s that owls have. Theirs are better.
I love owls.
I found that fascinating, so I wanted to share anyway. So the bullet traveled through her C1 vertebrae and shattered it. And then out the back of her spinal column in like right below her brainstem. Even though Dr. Coyne wasn't able to list a specific date and time of death for Heyzel, he was able to approximate when he believed she may have died, based on a variety of factors, like how her fingers had already started to dry out, which is mummification.
Yeah.
By the time the ambulance arrived, how much rigor her body was in and had already gone through, things like that. Dr. Coyne believed that Heyzel had been dead for roughly 24 to 36 hours, give or take.
Damn.
Before 911 arrived. If this was true, this notably narrowed the window where an unknown intruder could have killed Heyzel because of all of the mobile phone data.
Okay.
It also opened up the possibility that Joyner could have absolutely killed Heyzel before leaving with their two daughters to visit his parents in Winter Haven.
Okay.
And if that turned out to be true, it would mean that their daughters would have been in the apartment at the time their mother was killed. And warning, that's going to come back around at the end of the episode because The 3-year-old was interviewed.
I was wondering about that.
So we're gonna go through that. Now, let's go back to that fucking box of random items.
Yeah, please. What's that about?
So again, this box was found by some schmo walking his dog along a walking path in Port St. Lucie, which is like over 100 miles away from Fort Myers. So it was intentionally taken there
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Investigator Dennis Lambert, a member of the Fort Myers Police Department, and helping the squad out, analyzed the various crime scene photos that had been taken of the apartment after police had arrived at the scene, and he began comparing those crime scene photos with photos of the items that were found in the box.
Okay.
And what Lambert discovered was that several of the items that were in the box could be seen clearly in the crime scene photos.
Oh, wow.
For example, that fucking sneaker, the right sneaker that was a men's sneaker that was white and black, was clearly visible on the floor in one of the crime scene photos. The day that Joyner called 911.
Whoa. Okay.
The makeup bag, there was a makeup bag that I would assume was Heyzel's that was in the box of random items found in Port St. Lucie. That same makeup bag, it was like black with hot pink flowers. And then it had like hot pink stitching and a hot pink zipper. So it was very like stand out and noticeable. That same makeup bag is in one of the crime scene photos. So this ruled out somebody having stolen those items and then discarding them 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Because they had clearly been removed from the crime scene or from the apartment after the crime scene photos had been taken. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
There's also no motive the squad can point to that would make this box of rando items make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And nothing else of value was missing from the apartment. If you'll recall, Hazel's purse was sitting on the dining room table. There was fucking cash just sitting there. It was very visible. It was undisturbed. There was a laptop. There was a television. There, like things like that that are typically what burglars and robbers go for, untouched. So they're like, what was the motive for this box of random items, personal weird items?
Right.
Which led the squad to think that maybe the interior door frame of the front door to the apartment wasn't damaged when Heyzel was killed by some unknown intruder or whatever. It was probably damaged some point in the past and was completely unrelated to Hazel's death. We all know the domestic violence situation between Heyzel and Joyner. The squad was starting to think that maybe that was damage that Joyner caused at some point in the past during an argument with Heyzel.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
So while they couldn't fully explain the fucking weird ass box of shit, they suspect it could have been Joyner trying to throw the police off by making it seem like someone had tried to rob them and Heyzel confronted them and the robbery just went sideways. So the squad is starting to be like, something tells me Joyner is up to his eyeballs in this shit. Like what they're finding is like leading them that way.
Yeah.
They're not trying to go that way. It's leading them
Right.
that way. Now we're going to get into the really fun stuff. Now we're going to start analyzing the digital data.
Okay.
The squad turned to data from Joyner's financial accounts to see if they could retrace his movements the evening of Friday, February 12th, 2016. The last night Heyzel was known to be alive. What they learned was that Joyner was at 2 different strip clubs that night.
Cool.
They tracked down a woman. So again, this is the squad in 2019. Okay. They tracked down a woman who in 2016 had been a dancer at one of those strip clubs, a club called Babes.
Oh my. Clever.
Which was the second strip club Joyner went to that evening. She shared that she had definitely seen Joyner in the club that night, and she remembers seeing him because he was spending some serious fucking cash. So she was like, yeah, I'm going to talk to you. She's like, I talked to him for quite a few hours that evening, I ended up making like $600 or $700 off of the guy.
Jesus Christ.
She's like, that's why I remember him vividly to this day, 3 years later, because he was in there all the time. He was a regular, but he rarely spent more than like 5 or 6 singles a night. So for him to be blowing hundreds of dollars, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get me a part of this.
Yeah.
Apparently, Joyner told her that he was single and ready to mingle
Gross.
and asked her if she would leave the club with him. Like, hey, let's get out of here. Come home with me. Come on. And she refused.
Good.
And that was that. He didn't like start a scene or anything like that. So Heyzel and Joyner lived paycheck to paycheck. They had some financial issues. They often argued about money. They both didn't make a whole lot. One of the reasons why Heyzel was trying to make a better life for herself and her girls, going back to school, getting that job at H&R Block, their rent was like $500 a month. So for Joyner to spend $600 to $700 at the club, that was very notable.
Yeah.
Next, in walks Eric Devlin. Eric Devlin is a defense attorney who has worked in the DA's office with Kelly Siegler. So they are professional colleagues. But he is a digital forensics expert.
Okay.
And he wears a vest and tie. I'm a big fan of Mr. Eric Devlin. He helped the squad by doing a deep dive into Heyzel and Joyner's mobile phone data, computer data, financial data, and security camera footage to assess their digital footprints for the weekend of Heyzel's murder.
Okay.
They started with the afternoon of Friday, February 12th, the last day Heyzel was known to be alive, and they started at around 4:30 p.m., the time Joyner would have been getting off work and Heyzel would have been home with their 2 young daughters. By 5:30 p.m., 1 hour after Joyner got off work, Heyzel was texting Joyner things like, "What the fuck?" and "Man, why the fuck aren't you answering your phone? Call me." It was evident Heyzel was pissed that Joyner wasn't home. He got off an hour ago. He's not home. He has a strip club problem. She knows he's fucking at the strip club. She's got, find my phone and all that shit. She could see where his phone is, whatever. Around 5:50 p.m., Joyner's phone pings off a cell tower near the first strip club he went to, a club called Lookers. I don't know who's naming these clubs.
Babes and Jesus Christ.
At 7:15 p.m., Joyner's phone pinged off a cell tower that was in the vicinity of Babes, the second and last strip club he went to. Between 6:04 p.m. and 6:29 p.m., a 25-minute span of time, Heyzel called Joyner's phone 5 separate times. And every single time, Joyner let the phone calls go to voicemail. He never picked them up. He never answered. He never called her back. Devlin, the digital forensics expert, was also able to see ATM activity at Babes through Joyner's ATM card, where he withdrew $100 6 different times. Side note, paying a $5 withdrawal transaction fee every time. So he paid $30 in fees just that night, withdrawing money from the ATM. At the same time, Devlin could see that Heyzel had logged into their bank account through the app on her mobile phone, and she could see all the withdrawals Joyner was making in like real time. She knew he was up to shady shit. And now he's spending money they don't have.
I'd be so pissed.
Devlin also investigated the Facebook messages he located and reviewed on Heyzel's account. At 11:44 p.m. on Friday, February 12th, she being Heyzel, sent a message to a friend by the name of Sandy Cuervo and told her, quote, "He took money from our account to go to that place." So she knows exactly where he is. She knows what he's doing, and she's mad. And remember, Heyzel shared with her mom, Isabel, and a couple of friends that she was expecting a sizable tax refund, which ended up being just over $8,000.
Damn.
And she was concerned that Joyner would spend it all, especially at the strip club. That money had been deposited into their bank account on Wednesday, February 10th, just 2 days prior. It appears Joyner took money from her tax refund and spent it at 2 different strip clubs, something he and Heyzel already had a long-standing disagreement about. So things are escalating. Devlin turned his attention to investigating area security cameras. He found footage from the parking lot security camera of the Maple Crest apartment complex where Heyzel and Joyner lived that showed the company truck Joyner had received permission to take home for the weekend hauling ass through the parking lot at 2:29 a.m. the morning of Saturday, February 13th. So Friday, February 12th into Saturday, February 13th. And when the security camera picks up the truck, it's hauling ass and traveling in the direction toward the apartment he shared with Heyzel. So he was coming home.
Okay.
Knowing Hazel's personality, the squad is like, oh, for fucking sure. The second he walked through the door, she confronted him.
Oh, absolutely.
Almost 30 minutes later, we can see an outgoing call from Joyner's mobile phone to his brother's phone. Less than a minute after that, Joyner makes another phone call, this time to his mom. No one knows what was talked about in these 2 calls, but what we do know is that they did connect. So his brother picked up and his mother picked up, but the phone calls weren't very long. The squad started to circle around the prospect that between 2:29 a.m., when we see Joyner's truck hauling ass through the parking lot to return home, and 3 a.m., when he makes the phone calls to his brother and his mother, Joyner may have shot and killed Heyzel. So that's what the squad is like, you know what? If that's true, EMS would have gotten to Heyzel roughly 38 hours after she was murdered, which lines up nicely with Dr. Coyne's estimation of Hazel's time of death.
Yeah.
And when you see, if you watch the Cold, I know you're going to watch the Cold Justice episode.
For sure. Yeah.
When you watch, you will see photos of Hazel's hands, and it's very evident she has been dead for a while. The apartment complex parking lot security camera then picks up Joyner again, leaving in his Dodge SUV at 10:23 a.m. on Saturday, February 13th. Joyner's mobile phone records show he made a phone call to his brother at 10:26 a.m., 3 minutes after the parking lot security camera saw him drive through, leaving the apartment complex. This time, though, phone records show that he conferenced in his mother. So now he, his brother, and his mother are on like a 3-way phone call. And that 3-way phone call lasts for like 2.5 hours. To add to this, what's odd is that during this 2.5-hour phone call, Joyner took selfies of himself, and he sent one of those selfies to his brother while they were talking. So they were on the phone talking, audio phone call, and phone records show that he sent a selfie of himself to his brother. So I don't know if it was like, take a picture of yourself and show me that you're okay. I don't know, but the selfie shows Joyner crying, not bawling, but like a tear on each had fallen from each eye. I don't know. It was just really fucking weird.
Yeah.
It was weird.
That's really weird.
The squad decided it was time to attempt an interview with Joyner. So to this point, Joyner has never spoken to investigators regarding Hazel's death on the advice of his lawyer. Molly and Tanya, 2 of the 4 of the squad, they wanted to see if he'd talk 3+ years later. So they tracked him down, and Molly put on a body camera, and they caught Joyner getting out of his car after parking at what appeared to be a new apartment he was living in. He was also carrying an infant car seat with an infant in it. They were able to convince him to talk to them about Hazel's death. And you can watch portions of this interview in the Cold Justice episode. Joyner's friendly, but he's not forthcoming, but he is loving talking to these female detectives.
Of course.
Yeah, because he's a ladies' man.
Yeah.
Anyway, when they asked him if he had ever owned any guns, he admitted he owned a 38, a 45, and a 9mm. But he had no idea what happened to any of them. And Molly is like, bullshit. You telling me you have no idea what happened to any of these 3 guns? And he was like, I don't know what happened to them after I sold them. which is like, that's not what we asked you.
You dick.
Stop being a jerk. Yeah. So watch the Cold Justice episode. It's wonderful. Watch Detective Molly Langton question Joyner. She was a destroyer queen. She would look at him because by the end of the discussion, Joyner, she got him on record about three very key things. Number one, he said he never fought with Heyzel the evening of Friday, February 12th, 2016, though many neighbors gave eyewitness statements and accounts saying otherwise.
Okay.
Two, he said he could not remember why he called his brother and mother at 3:00 in the morning on Saturday, February 13th, 2016. But there it stands. He admitted that he called his brother and his mother at 3:00 in the
Right.
morning.
Yeah.
And number three, he couldn't remember any of the people he sold his guns to, admitting that he had the guns.
Right.
So these are very key things that seem simple and not that big of a deal, but he's never spoken to police before. So now we've got this on record.
Nice.
The squad believed they finally had enough evidence to arrest Joyner. They're like, this motherfucker did it. They had the history of his domestic violence against Heyzel, the unusual Tulamo brand bullet casing found in the cardboard box in the bedroom that matched the brand of the live round that was found in his nightstand, next to the owner's manual of a 9mm handgun that's never been recovered, a ton of mobile phone evidence that showed Hazel's anger at Joyner spending her money at strip clubs the evening of her death, the 3 a.m. phone calls to his brother and mother that he's now admitted to, the highly unusual solo trip with his daughters to his parents' house in Winter Haven, and the 2.5-hour conference call with his brother and his mother the day that Heyzel was believed to have been killed, complete with sending a selfie to his brother of him crying, and importantly, a timeline that cannot rule out Joyner having been Hazel's shooter. He had the means, he had the motive, and he had the opportunity.
Right.
A warrant for Joyner's arrest was issued for the second-degree murder of Heyzel Obando on Friday, June 7th, 2019. Through a coordinated effort between the Lake Wales Police Department and the Polk County Sheriff's Department, Detective Lisa Benneman, dressed as a civilian, arrested Joyner at the car dealership he worked at in Lake Wales, Florida. Lake Wales, I looked it up. It's like a 2+ hour drive north from Fort Myers, and it's like 25 to 30 minutes south of Winter Haven, which is where his parents live.
Okay.
So it's like he like relocated up north a couple of hours from Fort Myers. Joyner was taken to the Polk County Jail and then later transferred to the Lee County Jail. On June 5th, 2023, Joyner entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the murder of Heyzel Obando.
Wow.
Since Hazel's death, Isabel has never had any contact with Joyner. He never attempted to tell her anything about what happened to her daughter. According to a May 10th, 2023 Law and Crime article written by Alberto Luperon, a co-worker of Joyner's whose last name was Falcone said that he let Joyner stay with him for about a week after Heyzel was killed, but that Joyner didn't seem all that upset at all about her death or seemed to have any interest in knowing who had killed her or in spending time with his kids. He also told investigators that he was shocked to learn that Joyner didn't even attend Hazel's funeral. According to the filed affidavit, Joyner indicated he hadn't attended the funeral because he wasn't told about it. He's claiming he didn't even know that there was a funeral.
Okay. Well, fucking ask somebody.
Since 2017, Isabel has had sole legal and physical custody of Heyzel and Joyner's 2 daughters and has been raising them with the help of Hazel's brother, Brian.
Okay. I was wondering what happened with the girls.
Yeah.
Good.
A court order that was put into place prevents Joyner from ever seeing or having any contact ever again with his daughters or any member of the Obando family. Though he obviously never really cared about or loved those girls, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Remember when the squad interviewed Joyner in 2019 and I mentioned that he had an infant car seat, he was carrying an infant car seat and an infant? I don't know if that was his kid. I feel like he wouldn't be carrying somebody else's.
Right.
It's like he just moved north and within 3 years he had completely started over, new family, knocked somebody else up, had another kid, whatever. Even more telling is an excerpt from the filed affidavit. There are redacted parts, but it's clear who is being referenced. Quote, on February 17th, 2016, a specialized interview was conducted with, now the name is redacted, but I believe this to be Brian Obando, Heyzel's brother. So this specialized interview was conducted with Brian Obando by Lupe Zambrano, case coordinator of the Child Protection Team at the Children's Advocacy Center. Detective Molly Langton of the squad and DCF investigator Selena Hinsdale were also present. This interview was neither video nor audio recorded. Brian, again, the name is redacted, but I believe it to be Brian, reported that on February 16th, 2016, while at the courthouse, he was playing with, name redacted, but it is clear it is the 3-year-old daughter of Heyzel and Joyner. He was playing with her outside the courtroom. Redacted threw her stuffed animal and then herself on the ground on her back. She then began making a gurgling sound. When he asked her what she was doing, she told him she was playing. Redacted, Brian, believed that she was mimicking something she had witnessed. He noted that Redacted never told him if she saw her parents fighting. Redacted, Brian, also reported there was a history of domestic violence between his sister and Joyner. The abuse began when Redacted, Heyzel, became pregnant with Redacted, the 3-year-old. Joyner said he did not want the child and claimed it was not his. Once Redacted was born, Joyner seemed to have a change of heart and was very loving towards her. While living in Key West with their mother, Brian and someone else witnessed Joyner shove Heyzel while she was pregnant. They contacted the police and Joyner was escorted out of the residence, but no charges were filed. End quote. Aside from Heyzel's life being snuffed out at 26 years old, which is so young and in such a violent fashion, one of the most disturbing aspects to me of this case indicates that Heyzel and Joyner's 3-year-old daughter was at home and witnessed her mother being shot by her father. Further information from the filed affidavit states, quote, on February 17th, 2016, at 11:17 a.m., an audio-visually recorded specialized interview was conducted with Redacted Joyner by Lupe Zambrano. Detective Langton and DCF investigators Selena Hinsdale observed the interview from the viewing area, which is a separate room. Zambrano's impressions and recommendations were as follows. Based on the information obtained thus far during the assessment process, it is the overall opinion of CPT that there is indication of threatened harm of Redacted Joyner, 3 years old. Redacted was asked if somebody hurt mommy, and she made an affirmative sound, then said, Papi. Papi is daddy in Spanish. She was unable to provide surrounding details. Redacted was asked if she saw Papi hurt mommy, and again she made an affirmative sound, then said, Papi working today. Redacted stated, Mommy cry. She was asked if Papi was crying, and she said, no, Papi not crying. Redacted was asked what Papi was doing when Mommy was crying, and she disclosed, Papi cry at Grandma's house. Redacted was asked if Mommy and Papi were fighting, and she nodded her head in affirmation, then stated, they fighting, Mommy crying. Redacted was asked if she knows what a gun is and if she knows what people do with guns, and she said, no, thank God. She then shared, I have guns. Redacted then stated, Papi shoots the boys, and continued to say, Papi shoot her gun. Redacted was asked what it sounded like, and she said, loud. Redacted said, no, when asked if Mommy was there when she heard the loud noise, but said, yeah, when asked if Papi was there. She said she was at Mommy's house when she heard the loud noise. Redacted stated Mommy and Papi were both okay when she heard the loud noise. Isn't that interesting? Back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
So following this interview, though, a medical exam was conducted on Redacted, the 3-year-old, by Jean Marie Blasco. Sally Beckett, program director, was also present. Blasco's impressions was that Redacted may have witnessed her mother's murder. The following is a synopsis of her report. Quote, while in the exam room, I spoke with Redacted with CPT program director Sally Beckett present. I asked her about foods and drinks she likes. She reported she likes fruit snacks.
Mhm.
She was asked who she lived with, and she said mommy's house. Redacted also reported that her poppy lives in the home along with her sister. Redacted was asked where she slept at her home, and she said with pillow. I
Aw.
asked her about her mother, and she said mommy at work. She was asked about her poppy, and she said poppy at work. I asked her if she ever had any boo boos. She was shown a scrape on Miss Beckett's foot and asked if she ever had any boo boos like this. She said no. Redacted was asked if she ever had any injuries that bled. To this, Redacted responded, mommy had blood.
Mm.
She said that blood was red. She was asked if mommy got hurt or if somebody hurt mommy. She said, poppy shooted mommy. Mommy blood. She was asked what it sounded like, and Redacted said it was loud. She was asked if mommy said anything or made any sound. She said, mommy said, ah. I just got chills. She was asked if mommy talked or said any words after that, and she said no. She was asked if mommy was crying, and she said no. Redacted appeared somber. I feel like she probably saw it.
Like, what was his reasoning initially for not bringing the girls into the house with him when he.
Oh my gosh. You have the best, well timed, and well placed questions because I was literally about to say, remember I shared that Joyner had left his car running and his two girls inside the car when he went into their apartment and found Heyzel dead? According to the filed affidavit, Joyner told investigators that he had pulled into the parking spot and left the car running with his two girls inside and went up the exterior stairs and into their apartment to get Heyzel to come down and help him bring their two girls inside because one of them was sleeping and he didn't want to wake her up. What a stupid fucking explanation. I
Yeah,
think he left the girls in the car so they wouldn't see their mother dead because he
absolutely.
fucking knew she was sitting up against the bed facing the door of the bedroom.
Yeah, and guess what? You can hold the hand of one and carry the other if one of them is sleeping.
There you go.
Fuck that guy.
Hazel's mother, Isabel, shared in an interview with the Cold Justice team that sometimes at night, when she's putting the girls to bed, they will say that they wish their mom would come down from heaven and be with them again,
Mm.
that they want their mommy back. And Isabel tries to stay strong for them and tells them that their mom is looking down on them from above. Isabel is one of the most amazing women I've ever seen. According to a June 10th, 2019 News Press article written by Brooke Badinger and Melissa Montoya, Isabel said, quote, as a mother, I understand the pain his mother is going through. But as a mother, no one is going to take my pain away. Now that he is arrested, I hope he feels the weight of the law. And he did. He got 25 years. I personally think he should have gotten more, but
Yeah, I'm not super fond of that sentence at all, but it's something.
yeah, and he
Man,
got to be scot free and live his life for 3.5 years before he was arrested. So
perhaps be a shitty father to another child. Ugh.
yeah. And that is the horrible, horrible, horrible murder of Heyzel Obando by her boyfriend and the father of her two children, Earl Antonio Tony Joyner. I hope he doesn't get out early for good behavior.
Yeah. I hope he does something to fuck up and is just in there forever.
Yeah.
Man. Well, thanks for that. Jesus.
Yeah, you're totally welcome.
That was heartbreaking.
The girls are like, so one of them is 12 and the other one is 9 now. And the sad, sad part of it is there's no way they remember anything
Yeah.
about their mom.
Mm.
I wonder, so like the 12-year-old, the oldest, I'm pretty sure she saw enough to know that Poppy hurt mommy. But
Yeah.
I wonder, there's no way she has any recollection of it or anything like that now. But I wonder if it's in her psyche, her subconscious, like generational trauma.
Yeah. Mm. Poor
I hope
thing.
she's not fucked up by it.
I know.
But knowing that you witnessed your mom be killed by your father and your father's in prison now, it's got to fuck anybody up.
Right. But I'm glad they're with Isabel and Brian, who can keep her memory alive and share positive memories with the girls.
And Heyzel, oh my gosh, she just seemed like, I kind of like wanted, like, I would love to have a drink with her. She just seemed like just fucking rad chick. Like, just, yeah, man. On that note, goodbye, James.
Goodbye, Carrie. Hello. Want me to pick you up? And they're like, no.
Oh, that just went really off the rails.
I got excited. I love the squad.
When I'm at funerals, sometimes I'm giggling because I'm
an asshole. Wait, what?
God, why are you so fucking bitchy?
Well, I didn't have a king-size bed as a child.
Well, that was oddly said.
Shimmy. Scoot.
I'm really happy right now.
What is this bullshit?
Stop. Stop, Carrie. Get your shit together, Jamie.